Grinning, I took out my purse and gave my business laptop, still warm from 14 minutes before I had been updating the spreadsheet. I then took the keyring out. Continued to clink. 11 silver keys from 2009 that are all named and tagged in my own handwriting. The vendor abandoned us in the middle of the upgrade, so I had to rewire the access system myself. I then handed them the last one. A tiny A worn-out M is engraved into the grip of a metal key. The building's key. No one winced. Not security, not human resources. They were unaware of what I had just given them, yet they would. My phone rang half. An hour later. I was aware of the unknown number, but voice. We are shut out of our own offices, but why? With a shout, the CEO's voice ragged with fear. I reclined in my seat and gazed out at the peaceful street. You instructed me to, I said, return company property. So I did. Let me go back in time, 21 years old. That's how I maintained that place operating for a long time. Not just facilities, not only operations, not only compliance and finances, nothing else. When the business employed 5 people at an apartment that was rented above a falafel shop, I arrived with a toolbox, a notebook, and the conviction that if you fix the little items, the large ones won't shatter. They lacked a business license in the appropriate city. Can you guess who fixed that? I wasn't in charge, not on paper. I never received the bonus or the corner office. Tahoe weekends. Over the years, I had 12 title changes. Coordinator of operations, administrator, and office team mom and manager. I was once called by a CEO who thought it was cute. However, about 3 in the morning, a pipe burst. Perhaps someone downloaded 400 happy stock pictures, causing the internal server to crash. They called me Salad Woman. They would say, can you just, and I could always, and I did every time. When the layoffs began, you would think they would have remembered that, but they didn't. I received a calendar invite from HR, just a fast sync, no topic line. 9 a.m. on Tuesday. Conference space C. I know previously. There were rumors throughout the office, restructuring, budget reduction, and strategic changes. The CEO had recently engaged a fresh branding company to revamp our company's image. $180,000 was spent. However, it seems that they drew a line at my pay. I arrived at 8:55. I always arrived early. Habit. The stench of burnt coffee and tense perspiration filled conference room C. HR's Haley sat opposite me with a straight back and a rehearsed expression. There was a new person from law next to her. Not even a hi there. We're taking a different course, Haley said. I gave a nod. Your function has been considered unnecessary. Last year, I trained 4 individuals. In their email, one of them now included the director.signature. Isn't that redundant? The folder was moved across the table as though it were Anne presenting. 3 months of severance pay with no thank you, no handshake, and no acknowledgement, you. By the end of the day, return all company property, including keys, the attorney noted. ID, badge, electronics, and any other organization property. I simply gazed at them. Allow the quiet to extend far enough for someone to move uneasily. Then I grinned. Are you curious about what did they forget? They failed to remember that I signed the original lease, when the credit score of the founders appeared to be a failed SAT score. No one else was accepted. I therefore intervened merely to assist. I claimed that they had forgotten that I was still the principal lessee. It was never updated. I never asked about it. My name was still there even after they rebuilt, doubled the personnel, and relocated floors. I would in 2015, the former CEO was reminded. Well, if anything, he answered, laughing. I suppose you own the place if it ever goes south. We both laughed. I didn't bring it up once more. I therefore knew exactly what would happen when I turned over the building keys that morning. At 9:32 a.m., the property manager had previously been contacted. The locks were changed by 10 at. By Nathan, the CEO called me in a complete meltdown at 10:27. You can't simply keep us out, he yelled. Calmly, read the lease, I said. You don't possess. He remained silent for a moment. You rent it, and you didn't renew. You wouldn't dare. Should have thought of that before you let security escort me out of a building I legally occupy. They believed I had been dismissed. Unaware of it, they kicked themselves out. This was not retaliation. Not quite yet. However, it was fairness. Corporate fairness. The silence nice. The kind that leaves with 21 years of leverage in one hand and a folder in the other. And now the countdown has started. Unless they wanted to deal with me, they had 30 days to leave. And I wasn't cleaning up after anyone this time. When the CEO's irate voicemail had finally faded from my phone, I had already made myself a cup of chamomile tea and lighted a lavender candle. He was yelling something about protocol violation, misunderstanding, and legal action. However, all I could hear was panic encased in entitlement. I didn't respond. I didn't have to, since I already have the lease. I also had time, which was more significant. Let's go back a little further, too. It wasn't until June that I realized something wasn't right. I was going through the monthly invoices from the vendors. Typically, I'd receive a notification of renewal from the property management firm at that time of year. It came back to me like clockwork. Always a small silent PDF file with the subject line, Lease Renewal Confirmation. However, nothing this year. I not out of animosity, but simply habit. I mentally highlighted it. I did it. I took note. Then I became interested. I opened my previous operations backup folder on my own computer, the one I kept, even though I was never technically supposed to because, well, let's face it, nobody would if I didn't. It was there. The initial lease that was signed July 2002 with my co-signature, as a tenant of record, not a witness. I would only agreed to it at the time since Jared, the creator, politely asked. Just until we get the credits sorted, he stated, I'll owe you forever. In reality, forever meant precisely 14 months before the business began to generate income. Then, I seemed to vanish. However, no one ever altered the leaseholder, so I didn't. Not when we grew, not after we advanced 2 floors, not when Nathan took over after Jared resigned. My name remained on each and every modification, each HVAC update, and each clause for renewal. Then I noticed it. Section 4B. If the LE does not submit a written lease renewal within 30 at the option of property management, the teeny reverts to month after the calendar days of expiration. Priority teeny reallocation and the loss of occupancy rights may